Hi everyone, it's Ketan Makwana here from Enterprise Lab. I hope you're well and welcome to another episode of the League of Disruptors show. Boy oh boy, have we been kicking it in January. This week is nothing different when it comes to the whole word of disruption and transformation and reaching your aspirations and goals and stuff like that. I've got a packed lineup of great experts coming on this week. JP de Villiers is going to be with us. We've got Lena Kay, we've got Georgina Morshidi. Next week we've got Jason Cannell, and we've got the amazing Jonathan McDonald. But that takes nothing away from my guest tonight. My guest is the one and only Jeff Nemeth today. And what can I say about this guy? We connected 6-7 months ago. We've been kind of on this trail of disruption between the two of us. You know, we're connected in so many different groups. And I've been watching kind of some of the stuff that Jeff's done. I mean, he'll tell you more about this when he comes on in a second. But I love the fact that he's got the word disruption in his business. And at the same time, he talks about simplification. So we've aptly named this show, how to live on your terms through simplification. And I'm going to let the main man himself explain all of that very, very shortly. But for now, Jeff Nemeth, welcome to the League of Disruptors show, brother. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. And the disruption word, when I heard you speaking on Facebook, it kind of crystallized what I was sort of looking for in the direction I wanted to take my business, because I had been a PT personal trainer for 13, 14 years at that point, and was just noticing a lot of, I was dissatisfied with a lot that was going on and what I was seeing, and I thought it was job burnout. And what it just turns out was I was just at a point where I could see that everything was, I won't say failing, but it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And it was in my brain. I was trying to turn this puzzle around and figure out what was going on. And as we just spoke a little while ago, it's the puzzle. The puzzle was that as an industry and as a business, we bring a client in that needs help, and they need some help sifting through all this nonsense that's going around, and then we start piling more things on them.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you have to be at my gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 a.m. and get rid of all these foods in your pantry, and then add all these foods. You're going to need at least an hour a day to do meal prep and 3 hours on Sunday. And people get overwhelmed, and then if it doesn't work for them, then we say, well, look, you didn't follow the plan. You're just making excuses. Well, maybe as coaches and as business owners, maybe our plan is flawed. Maybe we have to step back and look at what we're doing and how we're analyzing a client situation and creating something for them. Mm-hmm. And this is why people are getting fatter. People spend more money in the billions of dollars per year in the health and fitness industry. And now the coaching industry has exploded, and we're all trying to solve a problem. And everyone is just layering more and more on, when we need to be like looking at our lives and stripping things away.
Yeah.
And thinking about like what are small steps that we can take, rather than, okay, I'm going to layer on, it's January, I'm going to do here's the perfect plan. I'm going to start, we're going to go full throttle, and then I'm going to burn out shortly because something's going to happen that I haven't planned for and I'm not expecting. And then I'm at the end of January and I'm staring at 2017 exactly the way that the previous few years went.
It's interesting you say that as well, in the fact that best laid plans, and the fact that new year, it's this new energy, this newfound realization, and everything else that we talk about in this perspective. But how can I say this? Sometimes actually coming into a new year and having these resolutions, and I'll get your viewpoints on this very, very shortly, is a bit like having nitrous oxide fitted to your car or your vehicle. And the fact that actually you press this button and you seem to go at 100 or 200 miles per hour for a very, very short period of time, you kind of make good ground and make some real good distance, but all of a sudden this gas subsides, there's nothing left, you can't push the button anymore while it's recharging itself, and actually you're left very fragile and not really agile in that respect. The fact that sometimes if you push the button too much, you can actually break yourself rather than get yourself ahead of the curve and stuff. So I take the connotation of what you're doing in the fitness industry, and the fact that you have people coming at this time of the year with this focus and the complexity that professionals put on, and the fact that you've got to do this and you've got to have this plan and you've got to work it this way and layer upon layer upon layer. But I think that's quite similar in any other industry as well, where you've got people that want to start a new career, or they want to start a business, or whatever it is, and they've got all these expectations, apart from the fact that they've got to reapply themselves in so many different ways. So just spinning back a little bit before we talk about what you do and how you do this within your business, just tell us a little bit more about your background. How did where did you come from with regards to this, and how did you get to where you are today?
Sure. I started off as a kid. I was always active. I played sports. I had a really active upbringing all the way into college, and then I quit and started partying and doing all the things that people do when they go to university. And then when I got out and finished and got a job, I was one of the people that was tired and sick all the time. And I remember walking into the gym. I joined a gym like everyone does. And I remember walking in and looking around at all the equipment and not knowing what any of it did. And I will remember this day. I can remember the colors of the handles and the seats and where everything was. And I remember it just looked like a jungle of stuff. And what I would do is I would look at something that had a seat and handles that looked familiar, and then I would do it, and I would work on that machine. And then I'd look at what other people were doing. And I did that for months, and of course got nowhere. And then I finally, because I was there all the time getting nowhere, I ended up becoming friendly with a trainer, and he kind of gave me some pointers and got me pointed in the right direction. And then I got kind of going on the way to where I wanted to be, and I was getting some success. And then so then some people started asking me, and I started doing it on the side, and then I started doing this full time about 13, 14 years ago. So the progression has then come from, back then, information sources. There were a few websites. There were magazines, which were terrible. I mean, just the worst information in the magazines. And now everyone has a blog. It's sort of exploded now. So we've went all the way in the other direction.
Yeah.
And whereas when I started, I had trouble breaking them out of certain mindsets and certain truths they have. Now it's a matter of just trying to get people to listen to maybe 2 or 3 sources rather than the 10 that they're bombarded with every day. So that's how the industry has changed. And I think to your point, to people layering and complexity, I mean, I can't sell a book to you or a program for 97 pounds a month that tells you to count your calories and to eat more vegetables and then to just do some kind of moderate exercise for 30 minutes. That's a really short book. I can't sell you that. But if I make it complex and I attach a name to it, then I can, whether it's going to serve you or not. I can create my own gurudom there and then go from that way.
Oh, I love the way you just brought that in. I just love the way that you brought that in. And we are, I think this whole month is I've been sort of riddled with experts who I've been asking about the personal development industry, their opinions and the way that facts. I mean, part of this was sparked by that infamous article that Jason Cannell wrote recently, which I think had some home truths about this. But it's, we were talking about the ethics of things. But I think, what you symbolize here is the fact that, look, you can go down that path and make something look really, really complex. Actually, you yourself, the creator, may not fully understand what you're writing in there. You give itself a fancy title, and then all of a sudden it's pitched out into the market. I'm not saying everyone does that, but there is an element of this, and we talk about the sense of and the sensibility of the fact that if you are an expert in something and you are in this industry where you are serving others, supporting others, and building others, you've got to remain ethical to what you can and cannot do and what you are and aren't doing for people within that kind of entity. So, we talk about this whole thing of what you do in your business is you simplify things and you strip away things until people get it and they're able to become more free. What does that mean? And especially for anyone out there, and I'll take the sort of high fives and stuff in a second from the audiences. What does this mean for anyone that's out there that wants to serve people? Why is it so important that we are more not transparent, but much more simpler in our messages. And how does that work with your customer base? So people come to you and they're probably riddled with a lot of mess, and the first thing you've got to do is declutter, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the first part of it, and the first thing that I've realized is that the health and fitness in the body is the biggest symptom that we see, and that's what shows up on the top. But there's always another layer or two underneath of what's going on with people. There is, there's childhood stuff, and there's there's relationship stuff, there's financial stuff. All of this comes into play, and it will affect where you are physically. So, when we talk about the industry, the personal development industry, the fitness industry, the transparency is so important. And I mean, I have videos on YouTube where, 3-4 years ago, where I was the guy that was just demonstrating exercises. And, for God's sakes, I would never admit that, I ate pizza and had beer last night, or, that was, we didn't do that. You had to present this image. And now the idea that those people are still presenting that image, I would say that people want to work with someone and they feel comfortable opening up and sharing with someone and listening to someone who knows where they are and knows the path that they're on and is close to that path, or has been on that path and may just be a step or two ahead.
Yeah.
And it's so easy in this industry, unlike any other, to if something isn't working, to just flip it back onto our client, onto our customer, and say, I gave you the plan, you didn't do it, it's an excuse. And I have the biggest barrier of people that I work with is time. It's always time. I work with professionals that are parents, generally with parents that both work. They have kids in school, and it's busy. You have activities, you have time you want to spend with your kids, there's homework. You've got children. It's a juggling act. And for a professional that you contract with to say time is just an excuse, figure it out, don't use excuses, it's negligence is what it is. And it's laziness on the coach's part. If you're not able to meet someone where they are and help them sort through the solutions, and then help them say, okay, do you really need that? Or, okay, just let go of that mentally. The kitchen's not always going to be perfectly clean.
Yeah, I hear you.
So let's just embrace that and understand that's the wavelength that we're going to operate on. And once we can take a breath and accept that as a reality that we all live with, then we can move forward. And that's like something that we've kind of taken off and just pushed aside, and we don't need it anymore. There's other things that we can talk about now.
Yeah.
Your diet's never going to be perfect, but what happens when we get to a 75%, 80% of your food intake is the food that helps you reach your goals? And people always say good food, bad food, clean food, dirty food. There's not really any food that's good or bad. It's just food. And some foods are going to help you get to your goals, and some foods are not going to, but they're all inclusive. There should be room for all of them, especially when we're talking about, eating. Human beings have been eating socially, and it's been a social event to eat ever since we've been alive. So our ancestors, hundreds of thousands of years ago, were sitting around a fire, socializing, eating a meal at the end of the day, reminiscing about the hunt, and that's hardwired into us. So we can't ever separate the social aspect of eating and just say, oh, I'm going to have a salad when I go out with the dressing on the side. It just doesn't work that way. We're not wired that way. So, there's going to be meals, there's going to be holidays, there's going to be birthday parties. Embrace those. Understand it and enjoy it and expect it, and then embrace that and accept it and enjoy it when it comes. And the rest of the time, work towards those goals.
It is, and you almost bring it down to what something like Sean Whalen said in his interview, which is about truth, and I'm going to come to that in a real second. But I just want to go and say hi to a few people that are on. Michael Henrikson's shared this. Thanks for sharing it, and he's prompted up and said success, Jeff Nemeth. So obviously you've got
Michael's a good buddy of mine.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. He's an amazing guy. Anna Yaramboykova, I think I got it right this time. Last time I couldn't even pronounce it. Thanks for joining us. Tamara Endley's on there. She's saying good evening, Jeff. Hi Jeff, and good evening, Ketan. Beju Solanki's on. Zach Houston's on. We've had Jonathan McDonald's joined us as well. So we've got a number of people here. We're talking about living life on your terms, and I mean that in more ways than just the motivational thing about living on your terms, but through simplification. And we are, I guess Jeff has been, enlightening us just now about this whole episode that we have where we add so much complexity, and I think this part of the the age of the internet has things to do with this. The abundance of information, the noise that's out there, which kind of says 1 minute you've got to be like this, next minute you've got to be like that. Now, whilst we're also putting this into a format of fitness and health and well-being to a certain extent, because this is where Jeff's kind of expertise lies, I think that there's common grounds with this in professional development and personal development in any aspect of industry. So look, one of the things that we've kind of uncovered here is that when we build these kind of goals and we have these types of thoughts and feelings, there is an element of greed built into this. I want something that I should deserve, or I should have, or because someone else has got it that way, that I've got to have it as well. So the competitive and the greed edges you. Now, just for those of you who joined a little bit later on to this, Gav, stop saying we love Jeff in big and exclamation. So, gosh,
I love you too, Gareth.
What about me? No love for me? Come on, guys. Show us some love.
Spread
it around. Share the show. Great. What I was talking about to a certain extent is we at the beginning of the show is I was talking about our resolutions sometimes come in like nitrous oxide does on a car, and the fact that we press this button. I talked about and I said this off before we came on live, that I don't believe in resolutions. I think statistically the average resolution lasts only about 14 days. I know, Jeff, you used the words burnout, which we'll come to in a second, but essentially for me, I have more of a process of producing a bucket list of things, which for me means that I can be inspired, I can aspire to do certain things. But just like you said, in the connotation of the fact that we know that birthdays are going to come in deals and dinners and social events and stuff like this, you embrace this, that there will be times within your working day life, anything, where you're going to be in the zone, uber productive, and be able to blast through anything. And then there are going to be days where you're better used just curling up, putting a duvet over, and actually just either meditating or reading a book. So two things I want to bring back here. First is the amount of truth that needs to come in. That's what we were just talking about previously, in the fact that honesty and truth, not just in terms of the environment you're in, but to yourself. And then this other thing about the balance that you've got to produce on your expectations of achieving your goals. What's your opinions on these, Jeff?
There's a lot there, but we'll go through them.
Yeah.
And the resolution, thing is I agree with you. It's a difficult one for people to handle because it's so seductive to look at the end of a year and think we're flipping that calendar over, like I can change this and that. And I think a big reason that most of the resolutions people have fail is, like you said, there's just an unrealistic expectation. We get into December and there's lights and music and we have these traditions and it's so warm, and we look to past it and we think we're filled with this warm feeling and we think, okay, I'm inspired and now I can do anything. And we have this expectation, and we have financial resolution, and then we're a relationship, we're going to do this, and then with our kids, and we're going to travel, we're going to make more money, we're going to spend more time at home, we're going to get in shape, and then all of these things are competing against each other.
Yeah.
And then what happens at the end, you get into January, the lights go down, the music is turned off, it's gray. I mean, I live here, suburban Detroit, it's gray, or it's been rainy like it has been last week. It's just, everything is brown. So then we get a little bummed out, and then we miss a day or two, we get a cold, we get sick, we don't feel well, and all of a sudden you look at it and a week has went by and nothing has happened. Now we're repeating the same pattern that we did a year before and the year before, and now we start to go within and say, what's wrong with me? I'm doing this again, I screwed up again. And things that we wouldn't say to anyone else, or not allow anyone to say to our loved ones, we start saying to ourselves, and then we just scrap the whole thing and move on. And then when we get the first bit of warm weather, we freak out and go on a crash diet and go back to the gym for 2 weeks and try to sort everything all at once. It's a lot. It's just a lot for people to handle at once. And, you make a good point about, making a bucket list and then reverse engineering from there. Like, okay, so I'm going to go on a trip, or I want to go on a trip. We start planning the trip. Do we need more money? Do we have to budget for that? Do I need to make more money? Do I need to get in shape so I can fit in my swimsuit? How do I start doing that with the end goal in mind of something that we can really picture in the mind's eye versus, okay, I've got a resolution. Here's the pressure again to change something that I've failed at before, or a goal that I haven't come up with. In the back of my head thinking, I wonder if I'm going to screw it up again. Am I broken? Am I this or am I that?
So let me just cut in there very quickly, because this is interesting. From what you're saying, it's almost the fact that by the very nature of going with the resolution and the way that people act upon them, and Tamara says that people usually don't take action to follow through with their resolutions, which is true, and accountability matters in this. I think people often go down that line of, I'm trying to make this happen. Is it fair to say, by those, that the very nature of adding that complexity of how am I going to do this, where I'm going to try, and do they actually dig themselves a deeper hole? Do you think actually metaphorically they're going backwards rather than actually not even being in the same place that they were in 2016? So someone that makes a resolution this year has given up on that resolution because it's too hard or too complex or they haven't got the time.
I think they do. Yeah, I think they are, because I think that in that context, they're repaving a road that they've already paved. If that makes sense, So there's an imprint, and we're creatures built of habits. People say like, I'm going to create some habits. Well, you already have habits. They just may not be serving you in the way that you want, but you already have habits. So we're creatures of habit. Now, if we have a habit of every year in January saying that I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to make more money, I'm going to spend more time, I'm not going to yell at my kids, whatever it is, the things that I think in my head, and my instinct is to do the same things. If we do that over and over, we're going to repeat the same pattern. And if that's a pattern of falling short or dropping off on those after a few weeks, then we're going to start to repeat the same pattern. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So what's your take on the fact that actually it's not, there's nothing wrong with having the same goal, the same resolution of I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to make more money, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Everything's I'm gonna. How important is it? Okay, when we talk about the point of simplification, is as opposed to setting that far out goal which you never reached last year, to actually say, the first step that I need to take towards making more money is going to be this. The first step, I'm gonna take that first step, as opposed to I'm gonna get there, because everyone seems to be ready to be at that point of destination, but they're not prepared to undertake that journey. So how important when you're working with people and the advice that you give, that you have to kind of almost not restrain them, but almost pull them back to a bit of reality and say, okay,
I'll use exactly. I'll use myself for an example. Like, okay, I'm going to shoot a video for my audience. Now, if I look at my video and then Sean Whalen's video, Sean Whalen's been shooting videos like 2 or 3 a day for 5 years. Like, whose video is going to look better, do we think? Like, probably Sean Whalen's message is going to be a little bit clearer, a little bit more concise, a little bit more. He's probably a little bit sharper at delivering what he's trying to say to his audience. Now, I can take that and say I should stop making videos because I'm not as good as Sean Whalen. Or I can say, like, maybe Sean Whalen was at the same path as me at some point and trying to deliver his message to people that followed him. The same thing is, you can look at people in your business, I can look at people, and we always tend to look at the ideal, and we see that outcome, we see that goal, and we know where that is, but we're obsessed with that rather than obsessed with, we should be more outcome independent. Let go of the outcome and be dependent on the process. The process should be the goal. The goal should be, the goal should be okay, well, I want to lose weight. I want to, I want to lose some weight. I want to feel better. I want to move better. I want to look better. How do I do that? Okay, well, I should be exercising 4 times a week, I think. Maybe 5 would be great. So I'm going to put 4 as my goal. Here's the days I'm going to do it. I'm going to add some buffer days in there for flexibility. So in case something happens, I can shift a day around. And I'm not going to make it really difficult on myself because I want to build momentum going forward. So I'm only going to plan this out a week. And then I'm going to see how the process goes through this week. And then on the diet side of things, I'm going to try to be compliant 65% or 75% of my meals throughout the week, and I'll just use some simple math to do that. So if we become more goal-oriented in terms of our processes, then that outcome takes care of itself. But as a human, we all do that, and social media makes it even worse. You know, your high school classmate just bought a brand new car, and he's with a company, and they went public, and you know he's got a new house, and you're sitting there going, yeah.
Why not me? Why me? Why him?
Right?
Why him?
Why him? Good for him, but
Absolutely.
Where's my new car? I want a Maserati. Like, where's mine?
But this is my point about social. When we get to this second, I see that Tamara's put quite a few messages. So let me get these up. And basically, she talks about that people don't make conscious changes. They're not mentally ready. They don't shift this mindset. We've been touching a little bit about that mindset change. Yeah, Jeff's just been talking about actually that bomb that he dropped was, you know, the goal should be your process. The process is your goal rather than the actual outcome of losing the weight. The weight loss part of it is the reward for the return on the investment. So the process is goal. Take smaller steps. Yes, Tamara's saying that. Smaller achievable goals, then build momentum once a goal has been reached or achieved. And if process should be the goal, yeah, she's saying that she loves that message too. Let's just come back to this whole thing about social. As I say, I mean, I've said this before and I'll say it again, you know, social networks is where they started. The whole thing about this is connecting with other people and creating community. Now we're in social media land, which is all about the fact that, you know, Gary Vaynerchuk says it quite well, and the fact that, you know, today the smartphone is what the TV was to us, and, you know, the TV has now become what the radio is to us today in that respect. So, you know, your channels are YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all these different media terms. But you see that it's a very extreme world out there. You've got this whole thing of people celebrating their successes. Like you say, I've just got a new car, pick. Oh, I've just signed a massive contract deal, so click. You know, I've got 100,000 followers now, blah 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 blah. Whatever it is, it's all celebratory. And then you've got this part which is completely the other extreme, where people are trying to get messages out, hidden messages. You know, the fact of they talk about mental illness, or they talk about depression, and they talk about anxiety and all these kind of points. And, you know, in terms of forms of illnesses, so you've got one illness here which is, I'm going to show everyone the best thing that I possibly am, when really that's just a facade. And on the other side, you've got the underpart and the underbelly of an iceberg, where people can't really see the clarity points at. So I think, you know, in your perspective, with the work that you do, how much does social media play a part in the mindset shift that you need to bring into your clients, and the discipline that they need to bring in from what they see and hear on social media as well?
It's amazing the amount of coaching that I do on social media, in addition to everything else, because in my business, you can create some really compelling social media images and videos through my business. I mean, you have a dozen people doing power cleans in a gym with loud music blasting behind and coaches shouting. It's a very compelling image to look at.
Yeah.
And so people get this idea in their heads that they need to be doing this because it looks cool. I mean, like, you know, if I see someone surfing, it looks cool. I don't want to see a beginner surfing. You know, that's not cool. I don't want to see someone falling on their rear end. But when so what I'm coaching people with, and what I end up talking about more than I ever expected, was the unfollow button. And, you know, understanding the dose of reality with everyone. And I don't know how many times I say to people that you never know what's going on behind the wall. You know, we all have that wall, and it's apt that Facebook has named this our wall, because it is our wall. We put up whatever we choose to go on there. And, you know, there's so many people that have the bright, shiny everything put on the wall, the pretty pictures and the highlight reel, when we're going through at night. And how many people have sit there at night and we flip through, you know, we're thumbing through at night. And then what are you seeing? You're seeing a highlight reel of everyone's best moments in their life, when you were just sitting there paying your bills or balancing the checkbook and realizing that someone's off to Bali, for 2 weeks, and you're sitting here, and you just had to pay the bills. You had to pay the guy to clean up the dog crap out of your backyard. That's a harsh reality, and I always tell people, I say, if you are constantly seeing something in your newsfeed from someone that isn't adding to your life, why have it there? Like, just unfollow them or unfriend them. I mean, unfriending is a big thing, and people get very offensive about that, which is funny to me. Like, I think it's hilarious, but I think you probably do too. I think
it's politically incorrect now, don't you know? You can't unfriend people. The same way now you're not allowed to dislike a post. You can only like it. This whole thing of PC, it's gone mad. Where's Donald Trump? Get the policy changed at Facebook. Come on.
We need at least another hour to even delve down that topic here. But I always tell people, I'm like, if that's not serving you, if it's not adding, if you're not learning, if it's not helping you grow, if you're not getting something positive out of it, then why is it there? And by the same token, I encourage people to share. I don't necessarily, if you're an introverted person, you're not naturally going to just, post about your feelings on there. But if you have something to share with people that you feel would help them or would resonate, then go for it. But at the same time, there's a difference between a complaint, which is the woe is me, I'm a victim, and then the victim can always turn their statement around with a lesson and then their action steps. So at the end, you can say, I've struggled with depression, I have anxiety, I'm having a really rough day. What I've learned is that these 3 things that have happened to me are what causes me to do this, and my way out is to do A, B, and C. And then that changes the whole thing.
But this is it. This is what I'm getting to as well, with the fact that you've got the, forget just the personal development industry, in anything. We've got this whole notion now that we shouldn't be selling either in this respect. It's and most of our output should be based on results rather than our expertise. People question the integrity of how can you be an expert in something if you haven't got a qualification or a certification in something.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm going to put it cards on the line right now. I have no NLP training. I've never been trained professionally on speaking. I haven't even got a degree to my name. That doesn't mean that I'm not able to do certain
You don't
things.
have a degree? I'm done. Get off the call.
I know. I'm sorry. But then the very nature, I'm not a journalist, but I have a magazine and I write that. I'm not I don't work in PR in that respect or entertainment, but I have a show in this respect. But, I guess the momentum, what I'm trying to do here, get from this is, people, as they start to simplify their processes, as they start to understand who they are, what their values are, what they can achieve, and where they're trying to get to, mixing a bit of vulnerability and mixing in a little bit of their duality of their path and how they've achieved whatever it is or what they've overcome, is actually intrinsically much, much more valuable than this whole of, I just got myself a $250,000 deal, and I'm going to go and get myself a Bentley because I've hit my target. So, it's great. So I'm not saying don't celebrate at the end of the day, but I just think it does go back to the beholder, the person that's watching. And you said it quite rightly there. If it's not doing anything for you, why is it in your timeline? You do take the action to take it off. I suppose it kind of stimulates that statement of what doesn't drive you dives you in that respect.
That's great. Yeah, because there's nothing that's neutral. There's nothing that you just see. You have a reaction one way or the other to everything. And I mean, as you get to a point with a news feed and a timeline where you have thousands of friends and followers, there's going to be just amounts and huge amounts of things that are in there, and you miss, and you start using that unfollow button very regularly to just as a means of keeping the space clean, so that you are up to date, and the time that you spend on there is valuable and productive. But and like you said, don't, by all means, if you land a big deal or something, you should celebrate it, but you should also be very, I think, very candid about the work that went into it, because there were some sleepless nights, there was some early morning, there were some failures, and that's what people want to see, because that's what we resonate with, the vulnerability and the failures. We don't necessarily resonate with the successes. By nature, I think most of us are happy for people that are successful. But it's the rock bottom stuff, and Sean always says it so eloquently. His world changed when he just opened up and said, and he just told his story that I was bankrupt, I was almost homeless, I was suicidal, And I was thinking about ending it, and I thought about my kids, and he's like, that's when I decided to make a change. But in that, we all feel something that resonates with us, either a financial strain, a divorce, our kids inspiring us from the low point of our lives, like something in there we feel, and it helps us, and it gives us like a starting point. And that's where we, you may not agree with Sean's politics or any of his videos, but if you hear him tell that story, there's something in there for everybody.
Yeah.
And there can be that in social media also. And to bring this back to what I do, what I'm asking people with their social media is that, be realistic. Okay, so your neighbor is at CrossFit 5 times a week. Does he have the same goals as you? Does he have the body that you want? Is he even making progress? Because he might not be, and that's okay. If he's happy doing it, then good for him. I say that without any judgment, but that doesn't mean that you need to be. And especially if you've got a back injury or a knee injury, like what is right for you? Don't take everything that you see and assume that that's the way it has to be, because there's a way that's right for you, and then there's a way that's right for everyone else.
Absolutely, everyone is different. Karen Black has joined us from South Africa. Hi, Karen. She's saying hi, Jeff. She goes, people don't see the blood, sweat, and tears that people go through to get to the high points. I think there is a lot of BS that people paint on social media. We are talking about how people need to simplify. And that gives clarity, that gives a bit more transparency, there's a bit of honesty there, truth. We've talked about vulnerability. There is this whole, there is a whole line. I don't think there's a fine line. I think there's a great divide between I will and I won't, and I can and I can't, and I do and I don't. They're not fine lines, they're actually big gaps. I just think sometimes we get ahead of ourselves. We pump up all this steam, we can see certain things are working, we get a bit overexcited, and then we overcook the gas a little bit on things. We push out too much. So what is your sort of advice, or what's your viewpoints on, or how do you sort of embrace this balance thing, within the process of working with people, and the fact that if they seem like they're getting ahead of themselves, how do you bring them back, and kind of what's your advice on how people can start to take a little bit more reflective response rather than just that judgmental reaction?
I think that it's funny because I've always said, since I started as a trainer, I said your first workout with me, my goal is for you to walk out of the gym, and I said this in 2002 with my first client. I said my first goal is when you walk out of the gym, I want you to feel like you could have done more. That's the perfect place to start, because that leaves us short. We can see how your body responds, and then we can ramp up from there. If we do too much the first time, then it takes forever for us to figure out where that line is. We can take steps towards your limit slowly, but that's the intelligent way to do it. There's no risk for injury. There's a very minimal risk for injury, and it's the same way with anything else we start in life. I mean, I've had people talk to me this year because mindfulness was just on the cover of, I think it was Time here in the U.S. or Newsweek, but it was mindfulness. It was a woman, and she was very clearly in either a yoga pose or meditating. And I just snapped a photo of it today. I'm going to do a post later on because it hit me. It was like, this is reaching critical mass now. But people have come to me and they've said, I want to learn how to meditate, but I try to sit down and keep my brain empty and not have any thoughts, and it never works. And so people are trying to step into this and figure out how to do this. And so what I always say to them is, like, meditation is just noticing your thoughts. It's being mindful. It's, a quiet reflection. Like, you can do that on a walk. You can do that on a run. And I when I coach people and they start jogging and running, I tell them, take the music out of your ears, take the podcast out of your ears, listen to your breath, listen to the trees, listen to everything around you, and just enjoy the experience and sort of get into the moment. And that's really kind of what we're talking about with all this stuff, is being more in the moment rather than feeling like all of these things that we see and hear on a daily basis we somehow have to process and take into our lives. Otherwise, we're not going to be complete.
I think it's amazing because there's more than just the meditation part, that the lesson. I mean, I've only introduced meditation into my life over the last couple of, honestly, it's only been about 4 to 6 weeks. But actually, I was finding that I started meditating through when I was going to sleep rather than when I was waking up. I know they say you should meditate first thing in the day, it's more productive, but for me, I get more hyper in my mind does stupid things when I'm going to bed, because I'm on my come down where I'm sitting down watching TV or something, or watching a movie or a box set, and my mind stops, I'm not thinking, and that's when it opens itself up for so much more. And yeah, I've got the notebook by the side of the bed and scribble, and I'm like, I'm getting tired of this. So I started meditating at night, and actually it was putting me to sleep, and I was waking up with a completely blank head in the morning, which is kind of cool. I've now shifted it over, but this thing about, you mentioned it before, we're creatures of habit in the sense of what we do, and we do need to exercise that habit into ourselves, for more than sort of 30 days before it becomes autonomous to us in this respect. But I started with this whole thing of meditate. If you can meditate for 1 minute for 1 week, then you can meditate for 3 minutes in the following week, then you can meditate for 5 minutes for the so it's kind of whereas rather than saying, oh, you've got to meditate for 10 minutes, it could, you talked about the fact, take your earphones out, and just while you're walking, and just if you walked 10 meters within a minute, and you heard the wind and the trees and the leaves, and you could hear your breathing just for that minute, you've done your pure state of meditation, right? In this respect,
especially if you're beginning, if you've never done this before, you're going to get a ton out of that if you put into a daily practice. Like you said, you're supposed to do it in the morning, but it works for you. It started out, you weren't able to do it until you started doing it at night. I mean, I did it when I was doing it first thing in the morning when I would get up. It wouldn't work for me because my head, I was kind of drowsy, and I had all these thoughts about my day. And I was like, this isn't right. Let me sit down and force myself to do this. But then I'm like, oh, I want coffee. And I couldn't, So what works for me is if I get up in the morning and then I do a quick 5 or 6 minute round of yoga and body weight exercise, no more than 6 or 7 minutes. And then I do a breathing exercise that I learned from Wim Hof. And then my mind, I'm awake, I'm oxygenated, I'm amped up. Then I have that sort of physical energy, but my mind has been cleared of all of that through the oxygen, through the exercise. Then I can sit down, and generally I'll do a guided meditation for 5 to 15 minutes. Nice. Then I can start, and then I'm going, and then I can go throughout my day. And I found out my daughters are 10 and 8. They like to listen to guided meditation at night. It's calming for them. Before bedtime. And so on the phone.
I think there's nothing wrong with that. Like you say, everyone's different. Everyone kind of brings in at different ways. It's got to work for you. I take it. The fact that however it works for you. For me, it was calming myself. It's also brought a level of discipline into me. I mean, Alan Brower, who I had on the show, co-founder of Best Self Company.
Alan's awesome. I love him.
He's amazing. He's an amazing young guy. He's got a lot going. And he talks so much sense. And you mentioned this kind of piece about the fact that we get stuck into other people's agendas. So the fact that we can't work towards our goals. And I guess what I'm saying from this bit is that ever since I started to put that kind of edge of meditation into what I was doing, or and stuff where I'm going, I've become more disciplined with my time. So if I've got to write a piece, email gets shut off, the phone gets turned the other way around, and I just get that piece done. And then literally give yourself that kind of 2-minute reward break, and then you say, right, what's the next task? And it's the same thing. Like, it's right now, you and I are on the show. Everything else is shut down apart from the fact that I've got to multitask with the screen. That's all, just to check in those. But other than that, it's just the focus points into those things, and it doesn't have to be hard. I mean, I guess the next part we're moving towards within this is, as you start to build confidence within yourself, and you start to value who you are as an individual, and understand not your limitations but your abilities to that extent, it's got to become more a part of not buying yourself time, but making that time within the period you have. You can't add an extra hour at the end of the day. You've got to find that time within the days that you have. So just before I sort of get you to give me a little bit more about time management, I just want to take some comments back out from the audience here again. Karen's talking about anxiety and fear are the biggest challenges to overcome. I think a lot of Tamara Endley says that I think a lot of people use people's circumstances and play on the emotions that they may have when it comes to changing their lives. They plant fear and scarcity to the stuff they put on social media. It's quite true, Tamara.
Absolutely.
Tamara also goes on to say fear and scarcity into posting stuff. Karen talks about the fact she runs every day, no phone, no music, just her and the road. And
awesome.
And for her, it's 3 bits: being focused and, well, actually it's 2: focused and in the zone. So look. We've had Jeff on for almost 45 minutes. Actually 45 minutes. We've only got 15 minutes left, guys. If you have any questions you want to ask Jeff, now's the time to get them in.
Post them up
now. Even if the show's finished and you're watching this now, post the questions up. Jeff will come back and respond to those specifically. But if you're watching this live, you get Jeff to respond to you live on these questions. So come on, challenge the man. The man's been talking about simplification for transformation, which allows you to live life on your terms more than just the words your terms. So Jeff, we've talked about resolutions, we've talked about goals, we've talked about what the goal should be, the process, not the output and the results. We kind of transitioned more into this kind of area of about affordability of time and managing time. What's your take on how to manage time, and what is it that you instill into your clients when you're working with them about this time? Because whilst you talk about going to the gym or eating habits and stuff like this, you've also mentioned the flip side of this, that sometimes you can't get to the gym. Sometimes there's going to be a birthday or a social event and you're going to have to let the diet fad go. So time management, how does this work in Nemeth's world?
I think it's important for everybody to realize that, and you touched on confidence a few minutes ago, and we talked about anxiety, and part of being confident and part of growing into yourself and accepting and embracing who you are is the ability to say no, and to say that somebody else, or to delegate something, to say somebody else is better off doing this than I am. I don't have to do everything. I'm not. And this is part of time. A big part of time management is realizing that Dan Meredith always says, it's okay to be crap at things. And then he embraces, he's like, I'm crap at this, and this. This is what I do, and everything else gets outsourced. And he's like an extreme example of that. But I think for me, when I'm talking to my clients is, what is it that you're doing you don't have to do that somebody else would be better served to do, that frees up your time? And then the second part of that is, once we start looking at those things, and a lot of times we have an emotional hold on something that we've done. Why do you do that? Well, that's why I've always done it. That's the day I do that. I always do that. That's why I do it. There's probably a better way. But then there's also the second part of this that, understanding just from the hardcore tactical part of exercise in fitness is that it doesn't have to be an hour at the gym every day. There's days that's not going to work, and having a kettlebell or some dumbbells around the house and some creativity or just some tools at your disposal that you can do 15, 20 minutes at home is at the very least going to keep you right where you were. You're definitely not going to take a step back, and you'll probably take a little step forward, just not as big of a one.
Yeah.
So part of it is this expectation of what things have to look like. What does my fitness plan have to look like? And when we think of this, we immediately think of a very regimented 5-6 days a week at the gym for 1 hour, exactly 60 minutes, when in reality we can be a lot more efficient with that. I like to get people, their whole gym trip an hour, including travel time. So if someone lives 10 minutes from the gym, in my mind I'm thinking I've got 35 or 40 minutes to get them in and out of a workout, which should be plenty for people to reach their goals when it's wrapped up into everything else. That should be plenty of time. So if we start to embrace that it doesn't have to be an hour, my workout doesn't have to be from 6 to 7. It might be from 6:10 to 6:40, and then I'm out. That can be just as efficient, and that can get us exactly where we need to go. So that step back and realizing that we have all these technology tools at our disposal now. You have access to all these different workouts. We can do circuit training. You can have Amazon can deliver, for $200 a really cool little home gym that you can put in the closet when company comes over tomorrow, of dumbbells and a kettlebell and a yoga mat. And you can get pretty much a full body workout with all of that stuff in. And for most people, that's it. That's what you need. So it's a matter of redefining, kind of the theme of our whole conversation is redefining what it has to be and what we think it has to look like, and then creating a solution that fits.
But then it comes back to this the argument that we had, or the discussion that we're having right at the top, that actually it's, people, that's what people need. What you just explained, the simplicity and being able to do it in small chunks, and just daily consistent action in that particular way will at least keep you at that point of progress, as opposed to you're falling behind or way pushing ahead. But people want to be seen to be in the gym. I mean, I get these ludicrous Facebook notifications that people are in the gym at 4:30 in the morning. I'm like, why? And then or whatever it is that I've got a tag that I'm in the gym right now. Woohoo! I can go past the gym. In fact, Facebook allows you to find the gym. I can go to the gym every day from my bed in that respect. I can tag it and say I was at the gym in this respect. I
can check in right now and be at the gym.
This is my point. But this is what it is. We want to be seen. We want to be in that environment. We want those mirrors around us. We want these leotards and whatever it is that people wear these days. In the gym, we've got to have all of these kind of things. I mean, I've got this guy I know who never used to go to the gym. All of a sudden wants to go to the gym. He's going to the gym now, which is great. But he's just bought all this new gear. I mean, he spent hundreds of pounds on all this stuff, and I'm like, dude, you're going to go for 2 weeks and those trainers are just going to gather dust on that. But it's the whole want, it's the desire of everything else around us. I just got a couple of questions that come in. I want to take these because I'm conscious of time and I want to make sure we answer these questions. Keith Dean's asking, do you want a cup of tea? Then he goes, actually, I'm only joking, with great contents. Actually, a cup of tea would have been quite nice, actually, Keith, but seeing as you're not offering it now, you can go away. Come on, you just let us down. Hyped us up. My mouth is ready for tea, and now I can't have it.
That's Keith Dean for you.
I know. Karen's asking, Jeff, how do you manage anxiety? It's one of her biggest challenges. That's a really good question. How do you manage anxiety?
Anxiety is a tough one. The quick and dirty answer is to meditation is always good. Breathing exercises, those are always good. There's obviously a deeper dive that needs to go on to figure out what's causing the anxiety. And that's a larger issue. But for me, my anxiety tends to be situational, something I'm nervous about, something I'm fearing. And generally that comes down to, with me personally, feeling that I'm not enough. It's a lack. Like, I'm not enough to handle this problem. I'm not enough to handle this challenge. I'm not enough to take the situation and make it better. That's where it comes from, I think, for a lot of people. So I think if you sort of, in that context, look at the situation and bring some appreciation and some gratitude into the things that you do have, your life, your family, maybe a job, your home, your pet, any of those things, no matter how small they are, when you start to look at those two and start to marry them together, I think that might help out.
So, okay, just add a little bit onto this this topic. What is the relationship between anxiety and overwhelmness, and where is the distinction you feel where someone is overwhelmed and someone is becoming overly anxious?
I think anxiety would be more, in my world, that's more of a clinical term. But I think that what most of us feel on the day-to-day basis is more of an overwhelm.
Yeah.
With the schedules, with the finances, with the workload, with the kids, with all of that stuff. We feel a sense of overwhelm. I think if we don't sort of address it, then it becomes anxiety. So maybe it's taking it a step further. When overwhelm starts to stack up, it becomes anxiety. I'm a big fan of exercise. To help with this overwhelm and with the anxiety. I mean, that's a huge place to start. Scheduling, and then again, letting go of stuff. Yeah. Like I said, the kitchen's not always going to be clean. Sometimes there's going to be dirty dishes in the sink, and a neighbor may come over. If they're offended by that, I'm going to accept that they're offended, and maybe they should look at why my dirty cereal bowl is triggering them. But we don't have to take that on.
It's their problem, not yours.
We don't have to own that. We don't have to own that. That's theirs. They can have that. They're free to it.
But there's an element of that within anxiety, though, isn't it? That we actually take on other people's pain and problems and issues, and that's the very reason to why we become so anxious at what it is. It's because she said that, or because he acted this way, or because they won't like me in this kind of, and all of a sudden,
how about take it a step further? How about just meeting we're trying to meet someone else's expectation. We're trying to meet their expectation that we're trying to meet an expectation for someone who doesn't pay our bills, who's not in our family, who we don't have a lot of contact with, but there's an unseen perception that we have of their expectation of us that we're trying to meet and we don't feel we can. So that gap that we feel we can hit, and where this other level that somebody else may or may not even think, that is what we're staring at.
I think that's really, really powerful. I think the fact that we encompass ourselves with other people's problems, kind of puts that disillusion on what our expectations are. All of a sudden, we sacrifice what our expectations are for the greater good of others in that kind of particular, and that's there in itself is that layer of complexity that you talk about, and the fact that we complex, whether the systems that a professional gives to a client or the very layers that you embalm yourself within, just because you either want to be competitive or beat someone, or you want to be like them, when you don't really understand what they've had to go through, or like you said proverbially of that guy who's doing all those reps and everything in the gym, is he even moving forward, or is it just we don't understand their circumstances, we just perceive something and believe that's the way it needs to go forward. I've got a couple of more comments here to take. We've only got a couple of minutes left, guys, so you've got to be quick with your questions. Where do we get to? Karen goes, she can relate to everything you said there, so thank you for that. Tamara Lee says to have made it, they don't see what goes on behind the scenes. They don't look at into their own individual circumstances, situations, and what they really actually need to make change in their life. They just want to succeed, even if that goal may be unachievable at that particular time. Then when it doesn't happen, they give up. Don't put your basket higher than you can reach until you reached it. Then you can move it. You can move it a little higher. So I think it's kind of resonating to the fact that we should be pushing things in smaller steps, something which is more logical, which is more believable by us, something which is more tangible and achievable by us as well, in terms of the route to the kind of simplicity that you conform to. The other challenge is when people will say let go, but how do I actually let go?
There's $1 million question right there.
Well, you've got 2 minutes to answer $1 million question, Jeff. Let's see the pressure. Let's see what you can do.
So, letting go comes back to knowing yourself and what you are personally aligned with. What are your values? What at the core of you is really important at the end of the day, and that's how you're able to let things go. Let's talk, you talk about a neighbor's expectations, or you talk about the family expectations, or you talk about all of these extrinsic things that we internalize. And if they're not part of who we are, then we have to learn to just say no, and saying no is letting things go. So to kind of bring this back full circle to say a client, who's someone who is at a point now where it's the 24th of January and their resolution or their goals for this year are not panning out so far. You've got 3 weeks of data built up right now that's sort of bad data, showing you what not to do if you've not been successful. So look at that and start to re-engineer what you've done so far. And maybe I would recommend, I would suggest, and after seeing this for years and years, you've probably piled too much on. And one of the biggest notes I've taken here during our talk is just saying that the goal should be the process. Not perfecting the process right off the bat, because there's no perfection. We're always going to be tweaking and always going to be growing and changing. But if you say, like, here are the 3 things I can do every day, simple things to start off, and just have a goal that we're not going to have any 0 days anymore, days where nothing gets accomplished towards the goal, or we're at least going to take one step, even if it's a 10-minute walk, even if it's 10 push-ups before bed or first thing in the morning. That's a day that's not a 0 day, and you've created momentum or kept momentum. That's the simplest way to do it. But if you do that day after day, what you will have and grow are habits, and then you'll have some success.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Karen, there you go. You've got your answer to your question. You know what you got to do. You got to let it go. And the only way you can let it go is by first saying no. That's the truth. Deconstruct and then reconstruct, as Tamara Endley says. And look at that. As a true measure professional, Jeff has said that in 2 minutes flat. We bow down. We salute you to that. So listen, Jeff, we've sadly kind of come to the end of the time that we have, but I know people out there, when they're watching this either live or post-recorded, they may want to connect with you, they may want to follow the progress of what you're doing, maybe if there's any sort of blogs or communique that you have. How can one get connected to you, and how can people find out more about the services that you offer that maybe can help them?
Yeah, Facebook is the best way to connect with me. We're already here right now. Everybody's watching on Facebook, so I don't like to drag people around to different mediums. New website will be up by the end of January, so another week or so, website will be up, and I'll notify everyone on Facebook when we're there. So that's the best way to connect with me. Send me a friend request. I don't find it too creepy, as long as some of these trolls that have been following us around on this page. My friends.
Yeah, I know. They love you, really. That's the thing.
They do.
They do. They love you, really. That's exactly that. So, guys, just a couple of highlights from there. I think that one of the biggest key takeaways that we picked up from today is that your process should be the goal. That's the biggest part of this. I think we often get blinded by the end result, or we puff up too much enthusiasm at the beginning of any sort of process, which ends up, as I say, the proverbial nitric oxide, which disappears very, very quickly, leaves you kind of fragile and not really agile. Jeff goes on to talk about the depth of overwhelmness that leads to anxiety, but then again, with simple contrast of trying to live other people's expectations and actually just realizing and living your own, kind of sets you free from all of this. Be honest. Truth will always prevail, and it's always the cleanest way to do it. And if anxiety is something that's pulling you back, the first step to this is the word no. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Jeff Nemeth. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on the League of Disruptors show.
Great time. Thank you.
No, it's been amazing. So, guys, that's a wrap for tonight. But we haven't got to go far away. Tomorrow we have Jean-Pierre de Villiers and then Lena Kay, and we're going to be talking all about transformation tomorrow. Tomorrow is all about transformation, extraordinary beings right the way through to the art of transformation. So we start off at 12 noon UK time with Jean-Pierre de Villiers, and then 8:30 tomorrow evening we have special guest Lena Kay. But for now, my name is Ketan Makwana. This is the League of Disruptors show, and I'll see you guys really, really soon.